So we have some breaking news that prosecutors in Atlanta have decided to press charges against both officers involved in the fatal shooting of Rayshard Brooks after it was revealed that the officers decided to step on, stomp, and kick the body of Rayshard after they shot him dead. So you can see here, officers kicked Rayshard Brooks after shooting, and it was shortly after this was revealed, after we started to see these pictures circulate of the officers in fact kicking his body in a newly released video, and prosecutors sort of publishing it. Then we saw officers were charged shortly after, and Officer Garrett Rolfe, I believe is how it's pronounced, faces 11 charges, including murder and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. He was fired, of course, 24 hours short after the fatal shooting of Rayshard Brooks. And this is actually, in fact, even more troubling when we started to go into some of the things that were going on after Rayshard was in fact shot. So you can see this is a section from that same New York Times article here. You can see the officer who killed Mr. Brooks faces 11 charges, with the prosecutors saying that he shot Brooks twice in the back and then kicked him as he was laying on the ground. Prosecutors said Rolfe also declared, quote, "I got him," after firing the shots. If convicted with the murder charge, he could face life in prison or the death penalty. So this is, this is a dramatic turn of events. For a while there, it didn't look like we were going to see any charges pressed on the officers. In fact, there were a lot of people who were expressing sympathy with the officer just for the fact that he was fired, which I did not agree with. You saw my video about it a few days ago. But it is a clear instance where, once new information was revealed, once we had all the information about the case, it became abundantly clear that we needed to press charges against the officer. Obviously, kicking a dead body, stepping on a dead body, as the other officer, it wasn't Rolfe, it was the other officer who was involved, who was stepping on the shoulder of Rayshard Brooks after he was shot dead. These sorts of things are clearly unacceptable and clearly not befitting, not only of an officer, but of any halfway decent human being. I mean, this is like the pinnacle of evil, right? Kicking a dead body, right? Like, that's completely disgusting and completely outrageous. And it was, of course, the discovery of that quickly turned things around, and prosecutors were like, okay, you know what, we're going full in on this thing, because, of course, people were obviously quite upset to see that stuff coming out last night, seeing those photos circulating of the officers and videos even of the officers kicking the body of Rayshard as he's, clearly either dead at this point or dying shortly after the bullet shots. And they took, of course, 2 minutes after Rayshard was shot dead to begin implementing any kind of medical attention. The officers were claiming that, the reason why, this is the officers' excuse for why they were kicking the body. They were claiming that, we didn't know if he still had a weapon. We didn't know if, he may have had a gun, even though, by the way, they had already searched him for weapons, because as soon as they woke him up, they patted him down for weapons, even though, all they saw was the taser. So they were thinking to themselves, maybe he had other weapons, apparently, and that's why, it was, according to them, justified for them to be kicking him and stepping on him, because they were worried, even though I shot him twice in the back, he might get up and use a weapon on me. So, it's completely disgusting, the stuff that we're seeing from police officers right now. And what's even more crazy is that police officers are apparently protesting against the fact that he was now charged with murder. You can see here, Atlanta police officers are calling in sick to protest the murder charge against the officer who shot Rayshard Brooks. And you can see here, Atlanta officers stopped responding to calls after fellow officer was charged in the murder of Rayshard Brooks. So it's completely ridiculous that police officers are trying to now sit around and side with the officer and say that, like, it was completely acceptable to shoot him in the back. It was completely acceptable for me, just because he was running away, for me to shoot him dead. It's completely outrageous to see this kind of stuff. And it just goes to show, like, the deeply toxic mindset of policing and of police officers, right? That you have someone who is held accountable for their actions, someone who stepped on, stomped, and kicked on a dead body. Someone is finally being held accountable for their actions in the police department. And what do? They go to protest. It reminds me of, when we saw the 75-year-old man, I made a video about it at the time, that we saw the 75-year-old man get shoved down by police officers in Buffalo, New York. And then, when those officers were charged with, assault for that incident, what happened? Well, a bunch of officers resigned from their unit, right? Because their unit, and said, they were still going to be police officers, but they were resigning from that particular duty in protest because they thought it was completely unacceptable for officers to be held accountable for their actions. I mean, this just deeply toxic nature of policing, the deeply toxic and oftentimes, as we know, of course, racist nature and manner of policing across the country and of police officers is disgusting. That these officers, think that like they need to protest, that they need to stand up against the fact that anyone is being held accountable for their actions. This is just an instance of, finally police officers are having some light shed on them. Finally, we're starting to see, the way in which policing occurs in this country, and people are not happy with it. People are deeply troubled by it. And for police officers to finally be upset about the fact that people are, recognizing for the first time how evil many of the actions of policing are. And then they say, oh, you're really tormenting us. Oh, you're really torturing us. Like, oh, this is like super oppressive. This, toxic nature against policing. You are anti-police. Let me tell you something. If the job that you are doing is inherently racist, is evil, has problematic aspects of it, then you shouldn't do your job. Because the response that they're always running around with when it comes to Rayshard Brooks is, look, man, the officer was just doing his job. He was just doing his job. He wanted to make sure that, he wasn't running away. Of course, that's why he shouted, I got him, after shooting him. I got him after shooting him dead. Yeah, you did got him. You murdered him. Yeah, you got him. All right. That, oh, well, he was just doing his job. The officer was just protecting himself. The officer was just doing his job. If your job is racist, if your job involves shooting people in the back, then maybe you shouldn't do your job. And if you're not willing to reflect on that, if you're not willing to reflect on the role and nature of your own life and the things that you are doing in your life that might be racist, that might be problematic, right? That you're just doing sort of instinctually because that's how you're trained, then quite frankly, you deserve to be punished. You deserve to have, your actions, the consequences of your actions felt upon you. And yeah, it's going to feel like oppression to these officers because for so long they've been taught, oh, that's my job. That's just the thing that I do. That's just what police officers do. But quite frankly, we need to change the role of policing. We need to change the things that police officers do in this country. And that's the only way that we're going to get justice for George Floyd, for Rayshard Brooks, for Philando Castro, for everyone who has been shot and dead, for Breonna Taylor, for all the innocent black people who are shot and murdered by police. And not just that, for all the, innocent people who are stopped and frisked, for all the people who are, stopped and questioned by police officers, for the, innocent black man who was literally just dancing in front of his own home, doing an exercise routine in headphones in California the other day. He was literally just doing an exercise routine. Someone called the cops on him saying that he must be intoxicated or he must, have some kind of mental health issue going on that, and then he was arrested and handcuffed because that was apparently illegal when of course it's not. He was pinned to the ground and hit by police officers, for all of these things. Until we reform the role of policing, these people will never get justice. We can talk all day long about, penalizing this or that particular officer, but at the end of the day, there needs to be true systemic and serious reform to the way in which policing occurs so that we don't see these kinds of things happening every single day. All right, see you guys in the next one.